Okay. Before we got on the call and before we chatted, I sent you some questions, Matt, for you to think about and come up with some answers for that.
Oh yeah,
I used to call these my quick fire questions, but it ended up being at least like half of the podcast because they throw up such interesting conversations that I don't call them quick questions
yeah.
anymore.
I've got them here. We brushed on some of them already,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So yeah, again, it is the worst question to ask any fan of any artist. If you only can pick one album, which Tom Petty album is your favorite album?
I'm sticking with what I said earlier. I'm going with Echo. I the title track, Room at the Top and Swingin', that
Yeah,
alone is unreal.
yeah,
You know, th- I would say favorite. It is my favorite. If it was rephrased as Desert Island album, I'm not sure I would pick Echo. Um,
right.
but like I think Wildflowers might be a smarter Desert Island album. And when you're a freshman in college and trying to understand who you are in the context of people who love Imagine Dragons, definitely pick Damn the Torpedoes then. Damn the Torpedoes was all that got me through that. But
Oh,
as a as someone who's in California, not yet a desert island, and no longer in college, I'm going with Echo.
so question two: Mudcrutch or Traveling Wilburys? I think I know where this one's going, but I'm gonna hold it in my brain.
I'm going with Wilburys. I don't know. Was that where you were going?
Yeah,
Yeah, I just think that first Wilburys album is truly like one of the great pop albums. It's also when it came to when I first heard it, I was sort of just getting into music, and Handle with Care came on the radio.
yeah.
I think in one of my school carpools, and I was just blown away. And they sort of, this is going to sound very rude to the other members of Mudcrutch, but they sort of ironically have the opposite effects of like the collaborative nature. Like I think the Wilburys, the way in which they collaborated, and of course there's the you know ginormous asterisk that oh yeah, it's Bob Dylan and one of the Beatles, etc. Uh, I think it like expanded everybody's vision, whereas I think Mudcrutch, the way in which it was collaborative kind of narrowed the vision a little bit.
Yeah.
And that they're really, I love that those albums exist, and there are plenty of songs that I listen to repeatedly from them, but there's an element of them that is sort of more like artifact than fully realized artistic statement. And some of those lead vocalists, I don't really need to hear, if I'm just being honest,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know. Yeah, and man, that first Wilburys album, that's as good a collection of songs as you're gonna get, really.
Well, like I said, if you want to learn as a songwriter how to write melody, well, you know what? You can do a lot worse than listen to George Harrison, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, Roy Orbison, and Bob Dylan. I mean,
Roy
because those
Orbison,
guys
yeah,
just know. I mean, Orbison's voice, dear God. I mean, that's what I love about that. You've got a
yeah.
Beatle, Bob Dylan, formative guy in the counterculture in America. Like the only cultural acts really they're going to withstand the test of time. I think from our this century or last century. And then you've got Jeff Lynne, who, was in a little band called the Yellow and everything else. And yet, and Bob Dylan, yet the one they were all fascinated by and the one they were all in awe of was Roy Orbison, because he'd hung out with Elvis,
Yeah,
right? And so that was the thing that they were all, tell stories about Elvis, Roy. So,
yeah. And it's funny how he, this does not make me unique. He was Roy and Jeff Lynne are the two. I had no idea who they were when I first started
yeah,
listening. And when I first heard Roy's voice, in the pre-chorus of Handle with Care, whatever
yeah,
you call that part of the song, is always very jarring to me because
right.
it's this like very sort of spooky 50s thing. Uh, and it took, I was almost like, it almost feels like you're suddenly in like a funeral chapel or something. And I always kind of like wish I could fast forward through that part. But now, cut to me now, and I think those are the best parts.
Yeah,
Like Not Alone Anymore is the song I listen to by far the most on that album.
yeah.
It's hauntingly beautiful. It's just amazing.
Well, it's so funny because the Wilburys album, thinking back, and your memories are always fuzzy, especially when you're my age, about when you first heard Petty. I'm pretty sure it was the Wilburys because my dad's a huge Beatles
Really?
fan, as am I. But I didn't know. It's like, who the hell is this? I know Tom Petty like did that free falling song. Why is he hanging out with one of the Beatles and Roy Orbison? And because I was a big ELO fan because British. So it was the other way for me. It was like, well, I know who Orbison is because I've listened to him growing up, and Crying
Uh-huh.
by Roy Orbison is one of the all-time great vocal performances. So that was the other thing for me. But yeah, I mean, talk about Handle with Care, Dirty World, Rattled, Last Night. Last Night's a great song. Not Alone
It
Anymore.
is.
Congratulations, Dylan drawling his way through that track. Heading for the Light, Margarita, Tweeder and the Monkey Man, and then End of the Line. And End of the Line, I think, might be my top 10 favorite songs of all time. And again, like I
Oh
said,
yeah.
super simple. Keltner does not play a single cymbal on that song the whole way through. It's just that brush,
It is.
snare, and the kick. So good.
Petty's verses in that song are they're perfect. The way he sings Purple Haze, like I think that that by itself is just like, a perfect sort of like encapsulated moment of delivery, what the words are.
Yeah.
It's actually extremely poignant, and yet it's kind of silly.
Yeah.
It everything right there.
Well, yeah, and it was a thing too that I think rock and roll at that point had started to take itself a little bit seriously. And that's what I love that album is. It's as frivolous as it is brilliant because they're just having fun and they're writing one song a day. They wrote and recorded one song a day, and they would just hash out the lyrics as quickly as they could, and they didn't overthink any. They didn't do too much editing, and yet you still get this, like you said, a perfect collection of pop songs. So
Yeah, and again, we keep circling back to it, but getting rid of ego, and I mean that
mhm.
not just in the sense of like being better than others, but being overly aware of yourself. So like, my God, if being able to not have an ego in the context of the Heartbreakers already amazing, but to not have an ego when you're surrounded by those guys,
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's love of creativity and
yeah.
putting the result in front of yourself.
It's the pure joy of playing music, is the way I always put it. Right, and I'm sure because
Yeah.
you've released 6 albums, you tour constantly. I'm sure there's artists who are starting out in the scene now who look up to you and think, man, I don't know if I could work with Matt. That would be a little bit scary. But you think, well, we're all just musicians, and unless you're an
Yeah.
asshole, musicians kind of just like jamming with each other and learning different chords and different licks, and that's what
Yeah.
being a musician's about, right? It's about learning. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
all right, well, if you could join the Heartbreakers on stage for one song, what would it be, and would you play and or sing?
Oh, I think singing would be too much. I
Okay.
I I we already brushed on this song, but I think I would play the guitar solo on The Waiting. It's and when we're talking about Mike Campbell and soloing, I forgot to say that soloing is almost the wrong word for what he does, because that is a written solo.
Yeah.
It's an instrumental part. It's not a solo per se, because for me solo connotes improv, and he plays that the same every time. It's a written
Yeah.
part. It's just so brilliant. It elevates the song, and yet it's the perfect handoff back to the pre-chorus vocal, and it's just totally glorious.
Yeah.
And I would love to play that. I think, it's funny you mentioned how the voice is just another instrument, and yet, sorry, I shouldn't have been drinking bubbles. I'm
That's
getting
okay.
um, uh, the voice, in so many ways, it's proper to think of it as just another instrument, and yet there is an element of it that's so intimately connected to the singer
Yeah.
that somehow I think being on stage with the Heartbreakers, being Tom, and maybe I'm thinking of this through the lens of him having passed away, but it's sort of almost too much. It's more than I might be able to bear. Whereas
Yeah.
I think playing a guitar part would feel like I am interfacing with them in the appropriate way. So I think the solo from The Waiting. I think that's what I would want to do.
But you could totally do the high harmonies for that song too, though.
That's
You've got the
true.
falsetto. You could do that. You could take the Howie lead on that,
Oh man, those early Stan harmonies are
Yeah.
out of control. Great. The yeah, on the torpedoes and Hard Promises, those
Yeah.
high harmonies are unbelievable.
We talked about that. I was talking about that with I think Paul Zollo, where I was saying like, man, what luck too though Tom had with finding not only singers who were good singers, but also who complemented his voice. We had Stan, then Howie, and then Scott Thurston, who like, okay, we'll just bring Scott Thurston into the band then because he's hanging around doing nothing else. It's like, holy moly,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, totally. No, to be able to have people who are able to satisfy what you do, but to have the mental flexibility to realize that everybody wins if you are able to mold yourself to them as well, even though you're Tom Petty, whose name is on everything, you know.
yeah. But he said that frequently about about Howie and I said you still need that. He could sing lead with no harmony, but the songs wouldn't be as good and the performance wouldn't be as good. So I don't think he ever took that for granted, right? And he said there was even
Yeah,
one I can't remember which concert it was. He said him and Howie were sort of looking at each other, and he was struggling that night on some song or other. And he said how he just picked up, took a line, let him take a quick breather, and then he came back in. So that understanding between bandmates too is it's a critical part of being that level of band that the Heartbreakers were at, right? So
yeah, I think harmony vocals are so important for that. I think they, in a way, are sort of the glue that turns a songwriter with some dudes behind them into a band
yeah,
because the voice is something a little more personal. So to be able to be able to meld in that way, I think is sort of critical to some kind of onstage camaraderie.
yeah. Do you have that? Do you have a harmony? Do you have a harmony vocal in your band? Someone who's
I do, yeah. The bass player, as it were, as you know, as fate would have it, he's a
yeah.
wonderful singer. Great singer in his own right too. But he knows how to support my voice better than anyone I've played with.
I don't think I've ever asked a musician this or a singer this. I'm not too sure if I have. Do you practice? How much do you practice? You're just sitting down and going through. Okay, if I'm singing this, sing a fifth here or a third there, or like how much time do you put into constructing that?
With the other singer, you mean, or
Yeah, yeah.
you know, whenever we do a new batch of songs, we do sort of a separate vocal practice.
Okay.
You know, just a couple hours just singing with an acoustic guitar. Um, I'm spoiled because he's fantastic, so I don't need to hammer anything into him. So,
Right.
yeah, that's just my experience.
That's super
Other
cool.
people, it might be much more frustrating.
Okay, question four. Who would be your dream opening act at a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers concert?
So I went through a lot of different possibilities here. The person I settled on, and I'm sure he would be livid that I suggest he would be an opener for Tom Petty. But I came up with Elvis Costello, and the reason that I did this is because I think of them as sort of like flip sides of a coin,
Yeah.
where Tom is like all of his lyrics are understated, and he always does sort of the less complicated thing. Elvis sort of always does the more complicated
Yeah.
thing. Like his lyrics are like steeped in wordplay that is always too clever for its own good, and he's always trying new genres, sometimes to excellent effect, but like key changes and insanely complicated instrumentation and
Yeah.
arrangement. Um, and I think they are both saying brilliant things, but in like almost opposite ways.
Yeah.
Um, like Elvis needs to tell you how smart he is,
Yeah.
and Tom almost wants to like distract you from how smart he is. Um, and I connect more with Tom Petty these days, but especially in high school, I was a total Elvis freak.
Yeah.
And to me, there's sort of these sort of contradictory impulses, and I love both of those impulses. It would be a blast to see them at the same concert.
Oh man, if he opened, just imagine Petty comes out and sings with him on Watching the Detectives. How cool would his voice
Oh,
sound on that song?
that would be amazing. Yeah, that's true. Even better would be having them trade songs. Or
Yeah.
what about put Elvis in front of the Heartbreakers and Tom in front of the attractions.
Oh,
That
man,
would be
yeah.
fascinating. And again, my God, the attractions are all about stepping on toes. They are defined by stepping on toes, which is the exact opposite of the Heartbreakers. And like
Yeah.
this year's model, it works. It shouldn't work, but it does work.
Yeah, well, you want at least one band doing that, though, right? You don't want everyone doing the same thing. It's getting Talking Heads, man. There's so, like you said, there's so much going on in those songs.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
bewildering. How the hell do you even keep track of that? So I want Petty doing that thing, and I want Elvis Costello doing that thing. I love that. It's a great opening act.
Mhm.
I would be surprised if it ever happened because I don't think they loved each other particularly because they did. They were on the same bill, I think, in the late '70s. I think they shared a bill a few times. And
Oh
Tom, I
yeah,
can't remember
yeah.
what song it is now. I'd written it on the Damn the Torpedoes season, where there is an ending that is in a single that Elvis released that Tom said that he's taken that he took that from us. Like he's definitely taken
Really?
that from us, and he refused to call it. I guess he refused to call him Elvis, right? Because there's only one Elvis. But I think a lot of it was tongue in cheek. But
Yeah. Oh, right. I forgot about the Tom Elvis, the Elvis
yeah,
connection. Yeah. Costello has always been Elvis for me.
when he is who he is. Right? I mean, he's one of those really sort of he's polarizing, and he says what he says, and he doesn't really care if he upsets people. And but you kind of have to have the chops to back it up if you're going to be like that, and he kind of does. So.
He does. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, who's your favorite band member other than Tom? And I always assume that everyone's favorite band member is Tom, obviously, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a cop-out answer, but I love Ferroni.
yeah,
It's not really fair since I do know him, but I love what he epitomizes about the band. Like I think um, the way in which they brought him in demonstrates that they were willing to mold to other people. I
yeah.
think it also shows how great the songs are that you could bring in someone, and he doesn't sound like Stan. He really doesn't. I
Oh
think they
God,
have
nothing like.
very, very different, not just like slightly different approaches, like their pockets are really different.
Yeah,
But to me, that speaks to how great the songwriting is that there's fluidity in the approach and you still know how great a song it is. Um, and yeah, he also exemplifies sort of the generosity of spirit of everybody in that camp. I mean,
yeah.
I will say that Ron Blair comes back decades later. It's one of my favorite things in like rock and roll history. I just
Yeah,
think that's
totally.
so great. Um, so yeah, I don't know, Ferroni. When I was working with him, I just become a vegetarian, and he
Okay.
was at the time. I don't think he is anymore, but I wasn't driving yet, so he would leave the studio and go get us vegetarian food while I
Oh
was
man,
doing
that's
vocal
awesome.
takes. Yeah, I don't know. He could still be. So yeah, I don't know. It might be a bit of a cop-out answer since I know him, but I'm going with Ferroni.
I don't think it is at all. And I mean, as a hobbyist drummer myself, like Ferroni's a beast. And that guy can play and has played with pretty much everyone. He can play pretty much any style. And that's where he does come in and he brings, because he's played jazz, he's played fusion, he's played a lot of different things that Stan definitely didn't play. So he just adds different accents in at different points. And his meter's slightly different and his swing is just slightly different to Stan. So, and again, if you're a musician, you don't really care about those things, you don't notice them. But when you try and play his stuff, it's like, I can't play it. I can
Yeah,
play the notes. I can't quite play it the way Ferroni plays it.
yeah. I think it's the swing. Their swing is
Yeah.
just enough that it's almost, if you don't know it, it can actually be even a little bit unsettling from especially the sort of Torpedoes era stuff where it's
Yeah.
it's just not quite the same. It's
Yeah.
interesting. It's interesting.
Well, and Stan couldn't have well, I mean, he probably could have done, but it wouldn't have, those records wouldn't have been the same with Stan playing on them. You need, or sorry, with Steve playing on them. You need Stan playing on Century City and Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah,
And you need him playing on those songs, and you need Steve for only playing You Don't Know How It Feels.
totally,
Stan's not going to
totally.
play that the way that it needs to be played, right? So, but I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that
Yeah.
story about them him rolling up though, and he says he rolls up to the studio, and they haven't told him who he's auditioning with, and he sees Kerry Aronoff rolling out. It's like Kenny Aronoff didn't get the gig. Who the hell is in there? Okay, if you could go to see any Tom Petty concert from history, and I don't know, did you see him live ever? I don't think I
Yes,
saw that
I
part.
saw him three times actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 40th anniversary tour, did you see? Or
Yes, I saw it two times on that, and
yeah.
then guess it was the Hypnotic Eye tour in
Okay.
12 or 13, something like that, at
Cool.
Madison Square Garden.
Oh no, wait, that's one
Um,
of my bucket list
yeah.
venues to see someone play for sure.
Oh, it was great. Yeah. Well, I would see the Pack Up the Plantation era tour.
Okay.
So I guess 84, 85, in around then. I know I keep coming back to the song, but it's because I can't get over this song. The way they do the waiting, where it's solo until
Yep.
the bridge, and then the piano and some cymbals come in during the bridge, and
Yeah.
then it just launches into this kaleidoscopic, brilliant moment with the solo.
Yeah.
It's just one of my hair stands on end.
Yeah.
It's transcendent. It's life altering.
Yeah.
So that moment alone would make me want to see that tour.
Yeah.
There's also a great video of them doing it that way at I think Farm Aid. It's either Live Aid or Farm Aid. I think probably Farm Aid.
I think it's Farm Aid. Yeah, I
Um,
think you're right.
yeah, where he's wearing that blazer with like, you know, interstellar stuff on it,
Yeah.
planetary stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's some choices from that time that there are also horns on that version of the waiting. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I necessarily care for the horns, but I think that was just sort of a thing a lot of people did during that time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the
So
Dave the Dave Stewart influence, right? From Southern accents. You've got horns on
right,
some of those songs, so we need them for that. Well, we're paying for them, so we may as well have them playing on a few of these other
right,
tracks too, right? So
right.
and being an inclusive
Yeah,
musician too, I think comes into it. But yeah, I mean that era, the Wiltern gigs would be fantastic to be at. Or
yeah,
Michael Washburn, who wrote a brilliant book about Southern accents and who I've spoken to, said he looked at it would be kind of interesting to see what the tone of the shows was like once Tom sort of realized the whole, the battle flag and all that kind of stuff and said, like,
right.
let's not do that anymore. It'll be interesting to see how that affected the mood of the crowd. It'd be just to be a fly on the wall for some of those things, right? But what a great tour. And I mean, just visually, fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Okay, so I've been looking forward to this question more than any other because when I sent you this list, you said that this made you grin ear to ear. So, Walls Circus or Walls number 3, which is your favorite version?
Well, this song just means a lot. I think of Tom's lyrics as having sort of like proverbs laced through them. Like, they're really uh they're so simple, but this song is just like it's sort of a litany of like brilliant couplets.
Yeah,
Um and they're haunting. And this song, when I first discovered it, it was deep into my Tom Petty listening that I discovered it, because once again, the record cover that has Jennifer Aniston is not one of the first you reach for, but I'm so glad I did, because I thought I maybe knew every great Tom Petty song. And then Wall's Circus comes on, and I'm like, not only do I not know every Tom Petty song, but I don't even know all of the best ones.
yeah, yeah,
And I was driving, and Circus came on, and I literally added like 45 minutes, went out of my way to wherever I was going just to be able to listen to that song on repeat.
yeah.
It's just it's a perfect song, and I hate the word perfect, but it's a perfect song. Um, that said, I'm more of a number 3 person.
Yes.
Um, I think it's better. And I only say that about Circus because if you listen to the album in order, that's what you hear first.
Yeah,
And I think its production is really cool. I love the backing vocals. I think there's much to be said for it, but it's somehow self-serious in a way that number 3 isn't. Number 3 is like so off the cuff. It's I've used this word, but it's so relevant for him. It's so understated.
yeah,
It's the way they did it during the 40th anniversary tour, and the tempo just suits it so well. I think that Circus is really cool, but after listening to the really breezy approach of number three, the piano in Circus actually starts to sound kind of claustrophobic in a way. Like it's
Okay.
a little plodding. I
Yeah.
mean it's great, but um, yeah, I don't know. Number three, and the lyrics are not the same either,
No,
which is
there's a
important.
couple of lines. Yeah.
There's a line. I don't want to paraphrase because I don't want to butcher it, but it's fast. I love when you hear something like that in someone's discography and
Yeah.
wonder maybe it is an accident or maybe it means everything.
But I think it isn't it. But if I never do nothing, I'll get you back someday in three, and I'm coming back someday or
I'm
something.
coming back
Yeah,
someday.
they
Yeah.
mean very, very different things.
Very different things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's total, and it is. Tom didn't do things accidentally, right? So you know that
No,
there's something
yeah.
going on there. That it's like, okay, that's really interesting. I totally agree. And three to me is always that's the way that he wrote it. He would have written that with an acoustic guitar, and just you can come in on it, and again, you can play it acoustic. Three, I love the swing of it. I think it sounds a bit greasy and a bit dirty, but it's always three for me too. And you said like a
Yeah.
perfect song, and perfect is a horrible word to use about music, but I'd certainly say, I mean, a perfect lyric. As a songwriter, as a lyricist, you look at that and you think, well, I don't know. There's not a single word you could take out or put in there that would make it any better.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, half of me is ocean, half of me is
Oh
sky.
my God, man. I mean, don't you wish you'd written that line?
And the last half verse, part of me you carry, part of me is gone. That
Just
I
incredible.
get chills. I really
Yeah.
get chills. And
Yeah.
it is simple. Like he's not that line is not reinventing the wheel, but no one said it that way.
Yeah.
No one has sculpted that sentiment in that perfect way before.
Yeah. Just perfect. Absolutely. And again, so if sundowns are golden, then fade away. Again, it's just, he
Yeah.
had such a sense of being able to just write very visually for me. Oh, yeah. I adore that song. And I'm the same as you. Like,
Yeah.
I ignored She's the One for years and years and years. 'Cause I thought, well, it's a soundtrack album. Well, I'm not going to listen to that. Like, it's going to be songs for the movie and it's going to be about Jennifer Aniston. And I don't care about that. Then when you go back to this, well, what the? And it's got Angel Dream on there. And it's like, oh my God, I listen
Yeah.
to this now. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
okay, this one's ended up being one of my favorite questions because this one throws up some absolute doozies. Like some of the things that people have said for this one have blown my mind. So no pressure.
Oh, here
But
we go.
if you could pick any artist to cover any Tom Petty song, which artist would it be and what song would they cover?
Yeah, this could have gone so many ways, and I pondered a lot of things, but I what I settled on was I thought Blondie covering uh, "Make It Better" would be such a cool take.
Oh wow.
Um, is that the song that I want? I wrote everything down here. Yeah, either "Make It Better" or "Don't Come Around Here No More." I thought
Wow.
Blondie covering "Don't Come Around Here No More" would be such a cool thing. Because it's
Yeah.
like sort of this weird new wavy thing, almost like sort of new wave, meets George Harrison in India, but still, like I would love to hear what her approach would be, like someone who has a really different vocal tonality,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know. That's what I came up with.
Yeah. Debbie Harry's cut glass tone might work really, really well for that song. I mean, Make It Better. I'm a huge fan of that song, but maybe Blondie, maybe in the right hands, because the Heartbreakers weren't a disco band. Maybe Blondie would just knock that out of the park. Maybe they come up with an arrangement that would make it work properly.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like it's sort of a faux funk guitar in
Yeah.
there, and it's sort of like I think a lot of Southern accents sort of like just barely works, and
Yeah.
then some like you see like is Ain't Nothing to Me, is that the second song on the album?
I
I
think
think it
so. Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And that's
After
to
after
me that's
Rebels.
right. So It Ain't Nothing to Me, I would say that's a miss. Um and they don't have many of them,
Yeah.
but most of that album sort of like just barely works. So it'd be interesting to hear some versions of those songs where it's sort of the band that maybe is meant to play them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know.
I'm on board. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what song do you most frequently recommend to people who don't know Tom's music? And I always had a caveat to this now after someone commented that if there are people in your life who don't know Tom's music, you could probably just get rid of them. We don't need those people in our lives.
I wish it was that simple. I I go with I'm putting Shadow of a Doubt.
Oh,
I think
nice.
that song is that song does so much for me. Like
Yeah.
it's funny, it's it's upbeat, it's a great riff. You
Yeah.
probably don't know it if you're not a Tom Petty fan, so
Yeah.
you're not colored by having heard it and thinking like, okay, like if an alien came and was like, tell me about Tom Petty,
Yeah.
I think American Girl pretty much sums it up. I don't know that you can get that much better.
Yeah.
That said, I think like so many people are gonna have associations with that song, even if they're not like a Petty fan, that it
Yeah.
would be not optimal. Whereas I think Shadow of a Doubt does everything you want it to do without any baggage.
Awesome, man. Well, it's offside one of Damn the Torpedoes, which is, as you said, one of the most perfect sides of an album. So,
It's pretty perfect, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, man, you look through that whole side. Refugee, Here Comes My Girl, Even the Losers. Like out of nowhere, you get hit with this triple punch, Shadow of a Doubt. And again, I'm a sucker for a song title that's got brackets. I don't know why. I just kind of like it. And then you close with Century City. I mean, it's just in and out, phenomenal, top to bottom. Yeah.
Trying to think now, does he have other songs with
Oh,
brackets?
he's got
He
a few.
must.
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
I guess he has an album title, Let Me Up,
yeah.
I've Had Enough. That has brackets.
He had a few. Well, fooled again, or yeah, fooled again. I don't like it.
Oh,
There's,
I don't
there's, a,
like
there's a
it.
few on
Yeah.
the.
Which is a cool song. Yeah.
Great song as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question for these ones, Matt. Describe Tom Petty in 3 words.
I came up with a sort of silly, a way too like academic sounding thing, but it does say what I want it to say. It's casually profound, exemplar. And uh, exemplar because I wanted a word that's like role model,
Yeah,
because that's what I love about, and this is sort of something I've been dancing around with him. It's like he sort of like shows you a way of being, of acting, but without telling you. Like he's
yeah,
such a show don't tell character. So he exemplifies how what I think would be a beautiful way of living, of interacting with other people, with the world. Um, but it's this very it's never didactic.
yeah,
It's like presenting how to exist without saying this is how to do it.
yeah. It's true leadership, right? Real leadership by example. And I think that's
Absolutely, yeah.
it's the part of Tom that those of us who are fans and those of us who are zealots, it's beyond the music, is this guy who always fought for the rights of his fans, always wanted to keep his ticket prices low, fought against the record company for jacking up the prices. Like he was always, you knew that he wasn't doing that cynically to come off as the great, white knight. He was doing it because he
Right.
genuinely believed that that was the right thing to do. So exemplar, fantastic word for that. I think that's absolutely perfect. Love it.
Thank you. It's more of a 10-cent word that I would have wanted, but I had to keep it to three. I had to keep it to three.